So tell me a little bit about how you got involved in local government politics or politics in general. What was your path or your passion or interest that brought you to where you are today?
It was when I received a rates notice one year, and it was $1,800, and I thought, wow, this is a lot of money. Where's that money going to? What's it being used for? And I started looking into that, and then I made some approaches to a local MLA and some local councillors to find out how I could go back and onto council.
So it was because you were feeling it in your pocket and you said, I'm going to do something about this. This isn't good enough.
Correct. Dollars and cents.
Yeah.
That's the financial aspect drew me to local government, but I've certainly seen that there's a lot more in there, and it's not always as clear as I initially thought it was.
Mm. Do you think, does local government provide value for money?
Yeah, I really do think that they provide value for money. I think certainly at Bayswater, I'm certain our organisation operates efficiently and effectively, and I assume that's the same with other local governments. The problem is, for me, is how many offerings, how many services do we provide the public, and should we be providing? Because we've moved a long way from rubbish roads and reserves to, there's been cost shifting from the state government, and local governments have filled the void for a number of different services.
Where are local governments picking up the slack heavier, where it's impacting the ability to operate?
You'd have to think about that one.
Yeah, that's right.
Picking up the slack. So where's this cost shifting coming in?
Yeah, or what's been pushed onto local government from state government?
Can you ask that again?
Yeah.
Okay.
So where is the burden been pushed onto local government? What have state government pushed onto local government to manage?
Well, the very obvious one is security services. So most local governments offer not just rangers, but also security. And in fact, I think Bayswater was the first one to bring that in, that all local governments have security services. You'd have to question, since when did the police not have to fill that role?
What do you mean security services? Can you elaborate? I'm not familiar with with council security services.
Right, yeah, so we've got a few cars on the road with security personnel going to look at antisocial behaviour. We had someone breaking into a house near my home, and I went and spoke to them, and I phoned up our security, and I phoned up the police, and our security were there much quicker than the police.
Mm. And are these private contractors, private security contractors, or are they actually local government employees?
They're employees, but I'm sure some local governments would contract it out.
Okay. And do they have, what sort of powers do these council police have?
They certainly don't have police powers.
Yeah.
They're probably just more familiar with the powers of normal citizens,
Yeah.
which does include not arresting someone, but taking.
Yeah, but there are reasonable powers of apprehension.
Yeah.
But really, it's just more of kind of that social touch point side of it. If something's going wrong, this group goes out, engages with the community, feeds that back to council, liaises with the police as well.
Yeah, lots of liaison with the police.
Okay.
Yeah. And there's antisocial behaviour that occurs in our main shopping precincts, and so they also go out there to observe, people street drinking and yelling and things like that, and try to get them to move on or find a more suitable home for them.
And what I imagine that's an aspect of the council's operations that probably brings a lot of pain. It's the one that would be painful. It brings up the confrontational situations in public and so forth. Like, that's a real nitty gritty. What's the softer side of the council? Like, what's the stuff that's that's been maybe pushed onto council or given to council or within council's remit that is actually relatively easy to operate and provides great value and benefit for the community that you see could even be expanded further?
Well, we have a number of I forget the official term now, but basically they're community centres for the elderly. I'm sure we've got a more hip name than that. And that provides a meeting point where people can come in and mingle and do various programs. So that's a touchy-feely thing. We also run youth programs we call it YAT. So we have various all sorts of programs for the youth, and there's a separate committee for these organisations as well.
Yeah. Where is council? Where does local government not work well? What stops local government from working really efficiently? Is it funding? Is it money? Is it engagement with the community? Is it engagement from council? Is it disagreements? Is it how to sit? What are the blockers that you find just seem to bring about either inefficiencies or not always the best outcome?
Okay, so I don't think there are that many inefficiencies in local government. I think it is a pretty efficient place. However, there can always be improvements. Money is always a problem. There's a shortage of money. Bayswater's a very low charging rates compared with our neighbouring local governments. And any time you try to increase the rates, there's always a big media hoo-ha, and I can understand people don't want to pay more. So that's one issue, money. Second issue is sometimes you can have a dysfunctional council, factional council, and that gives confusion to the administration who actually run the council. They implement the council's vision, so that all the CEO and the directors and the managers, they run the local government. And if they've got a dysfunctional council, it's very hard for them to get the direction they need to run the place properly. And then another potential issue is when the administration and the council are at loggerheads over different things. So that you've got to have a smooth relationship between the administration and the council, otherwise you can come to all forms of pain.
What brings about this pain? Is it personality driven? Is it alliance driven? Is it related to political?
It's more personality and ideology aligned rather than politically aligned.
And what sort of issues at local council can call upon ideology to influence people's decision on it? Like what sort of issues come up in that regard?
There's so many. Like literally every council meeting we have 30 or 40 different agenda items we're making a vote on, and it could be how much we spend in certain areas. It could be, a good example would be building height. So some people believe in density and others believe in status quo and not changing, not allowing infill.
And so from your perspective, you found this let's say, people holding ideology that they bring into council is often preventing the best outcomes or the most optimal decisions from being made. Is that reasonable? Or is that me pushing my perception onto it?
Yeah. I don't think that someone comes on and is unreasonable. So by law, the Local Government Act says that we can't predetermine how we're going to vote on an item until we've heard the debate. And so all I would ask every elected member is to do that. So listen to both sides of the arguments and then form your view. Don't go in there saying, I'm going to vote this way.
Yeah. And is there enough time, is there enough space for issues to be debated properly, for things to be researched, or are you often working against deadlines because being a councillor, it's a part-time role but like full-time vocation.
Yeah.
There's only so many hours in the week. Do you have the space to get in and tackle these issues at the depth that they might require?
That's a very good point. At Bayswater, we used to have 2 committee meetings and then a council meeting after that. So the council agenda would be broken up into 2 for into the 2 committee meetings, and there'll be a lot more debate, free-flowing debate during the committee meetings before it was ratified at council. Now we've moved to fortnightly council meetings, so I get the agenda 1 week before the council meeting, and I've got to be familiar with all the content there. At the council meeting, you've got standing orders, so it's quite a rigid process. You can only speak once unless you're moving it. And so maybe there's not as much debate as I'd like to see. Because I could make a point, you could rebut that point, I can't then rebut that point you've made.
Yes, you've gone by, you have a certain meeting protocol.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so there is, the debate is cut off, it's cut short, which is a pity.
And what about community involvement in these debates as well? Is there much input from the community or stakeholders outside of the council and getting involved in these debates beyond just, say, asking the question at council?
Yeah, so on sensitive issues, you will get a great deal of community input. So it's not just asking questions, you can have multiple people from the same side ask 3 questions each. You can have petitions coming in, you can have deputations where they can speak freely for up to 5 minutes, even with a presentation. So there can be a lot of community involvement, and that's great, that's to be welcomed. I will also say though that I don't know the answer to this, but what I will say is that we spend a lot of money, local government spend a lot of money on community consultation, and we just don't get too much of a response sometimes. And so it's kind of a waste of money.
So community consultation, you're referring to the council reaching out, asking people what they think on things. This is generally done via things like letters or media campaigns. Like, how do the councils try and solicit people's opinions?
Well, seriously, at Bayswater we have tried to really improve community consultation and make a deliberate effort to consult more with the community. And we could be mail outs, could be through social media, could be emails, and then we've also got people on the ground going to shopping centres, going to parks and speaking to just whoever's around, trying to get feedback on certain issues.
And what's the most effective channel, do you find, at the moment?
They all have various levels of success. It depends how deep you want to go for the community consultation, which is when you start deploying the people onto the ground. That obviously costs more because you're utilising staff in that liaison form. But that can be important. Look, we've recently we're like the first metropolitan local government this year to do participatory budgeting. And we got some consultants to arrange this. They selected a random selection of people throughout the city, seeking expressions of interest to be on this panel. And then they cut that back based on age, demographics and things like that. And they ended up with like 35 people, and those 35 people went through 2 intensive days of the participatory budgeting process.
And the outcomes from that process you found were an improvement on what you previously had, or was it given the same? Was it validating what you were previously doing? Did it give a new perspective on the budget?
So it was our first time, and we'll do better. We did really well, but we'll do better going forwards. We put that out, we got the feedback, and it did guide us with regards to the budget setting, which we just passed last Tuesday, in fact. But after we got the panel's report back, we then emailed and promoted that for the wider public. In fact, we mailed it to every household saying, this is what the panel's found, let us know your views on it. So we then got further feedback, and during our budget deliberations, we were mindful of the community's feedback, which touched on areas of what community services we're doing that's valued, whether we should be adding more money or reducing the money through all the major aspects of the local government's budget.
What are your hopes for how local government could operate? Like, what's your utopian situation when you have engagement from the community, a lot, let's say alignment on council when everything's working, what sort of benefits do you see could be brought about at a community level if we actually work together and made all of this happen?
Well, obviously it'd be a nicer place to live, and if it reflected what the community wants, then that's a good result. One of the problems in achieving that is the state government is taking more and more control away from local governments in, say, planning matters. So the development assessment panels, where any development worth 2 million or more goes to a development assessment panel, or can go. And then you've got the State Administrative Tribunal, which can overrule council decisions. You've got the WAPC, they do whatever they want, which is West Australian Planning Commission. So local governments are losing the ability over planning. That's that, and that could have negative repercussions for the future.
How does that play out in the life of, say, a regular ratepayer? What decisions would be made at a state level that might go against something you're trying to do at a council community level?
Well, the obvious one is the introduction of from the previous state government of the rules over multiple dwellings. So, I've had residents contact me in tears because the place they've been living in, the single dwelling they've been living in for decades, now has a block of flats which are called multiple dwellings going up next door. It might only be 2 stories high, but it takes over the entire block, and it's imposing. There's now a lot more people living there, all with a car or 2. The rules that they have for the multiple dwellings can be as few as 0.75 car bays per apartment. Let's say everyone's got a car bay, then that's more cars on the street. It really does impact the amenity of an area, and that's been foisted upon people who may not have wanted it. That said, I see the wisdom of infill around transport hubs and parks. Also, if you've got a park, why not have people around it so they can recreate there? But a few too many times it's been happening in residential areas, which just forever changes that street.
I understand where these people are coming from, but is it not just a natural part of living in a city ecosystem that over time the nice little quaint cottage on a 1/4 acre block will be surrounded by bigger buildings, and eventually that building will have to move? The functionality of that building will have to be sought somewhere else. Is this not just a natural part of the growth of a city?
I don't see why it has to. I don't see why you can't maintain residential areas on blocks. So, otherwise what do you have to do? If you've got a family and you want to have an 800 square metre block, what do you have to do if you can't remain in your current home? You've got to move where further out to achieve that. That seems a bit unfair.
Unfair how? It would say, so you decide to, let's say someone has lived in an area for 30 years, 50 years. Is it not unfair to expect that time would stand still and that nothing will ever change? I want to extract what the unfairness is, or where the person is actually has been impacted in a way that we go, okay, that's actually, I can see how it's impacting them, but I'm not convinced that it's unfair.
And so, this is the community out there also have 2 different views. There's a bunch in your camp and a bunch in my camp, and that's fine to have that as a situation. What I can say though, and I can reference, is there are streets filled with houses, and one person, because of the rule change, can now knock over their house and build up this block of flats. If that's progress, so be it. But the street was perfectly happy beforehand, before the developer came and did the block of flats, whilst he lives somewhere else, I'm sure.
Yeah. As I said, there's obviously no easy right answer accessible on this, but around this, one of the things that I think happens with these arguments as well is taking in the cars issue, that you mentioned at the start. And I think that a lot of times infill developments are built from an economic perspective, and with a lot of the wrong incentives, as opposed to actually building a more community focused, taking a more community focused approach. Because there's no reason why any community or anywhere anyone might live wouldn't benefit from having more people living there. And this is especially true. There is nowhere in Australia that experiences such severe congestion of population that the idea of moving in another 20 or 50 or 100 people into that square kilometre will bring down the social order. It's just about how do we do it in a way that actually doesn't impact too severely on people, but at the same time brings about what it is good for everybody, and not necessarily what is good for the short-term investment that someone's looking to generate from this particular property development. And I think that a lot of these issues, it all gets bundled up into one big issue. Oh, a big block of flats are going up. But there's a number of things that need to be taken apart and dissected as part of it, and it just tends to get treated as this one issue. I think we could do a lot better if we were to broaden the discussion, bring it back into the community and addressing those needs, as opposed to the needs of the developers, who I think are probably dictating the terms of reference of the conversation with the councils, and communities then often just get to respond to that. But the frame of the debate and what's been discussed has been set out in the plans that have been submitted to council, and now it's just negotiating on, trying to negotiate on some details, or just blocking the whole project totally.
Well, you make some good points. One of the challenges with the town planning scheme, which is the rule book for planning what's allowed in a local government, the town planning scheme, you want to have flexibility in there so you can achieve the best outcome. But the moment you have that flexibility, it means that a developer can take that flexibility, take it to the state administrative tribunal, and get a ruling saying, oh, the flexibility is there, so that can be exploited. So if you have the flexibility, it'll get exploited.
Yeah.
If you have no flexibility, no discretion for making a decision, so let's say you come up with a perfect block of flats, which is just going to be great for the people who live there. If it doesn't meet one particular criteria and there's no discretion in the town planning scheme, we'd knock it back, which would be a bad result because it's a perfect block of flats. If we have that discretion, then someone who doesn't have a perfect block of flats, far from it, can use that discretion for their own financial gain, and the communities lose from that.
Yeah, I understand. I know that's very true. If there is a loophole, or if there is an exploit in the market, it will find a way. Capital finds a way to, find those exploits and optimizations in the market, and then it's difficult for councils and legislators to try and close those gaps without completely constricting the development. I get that it's a difficult problem, and I'm not expecting any of us to come up with the solution immediately, but again, it's one of these topics that would benefit from greater understanding and awareness in the wider community, and more engagement from my vision for what local government could do. And it harks back to your points earlier about gathering consistent feedback across a wide variety of metrics from people, is that if we were doing that on a sustainable basis where we're actually gathering good info, we could very easily take that, incorporate that into planning standards, and really kind of build out the picture from the community level as to what sort of stuff do we want in our community, so that when it comes time to having the discussion about does this fit the criteria, what are the criteria, the legal criteria we're going to use to define these projects, that there's a much more solid foundation from the community as to what we've agreed we will tolerate. As I said, I think because the community hasn't engaged extensively on that, developers get to have an overly influencing say on defining what the scope is.
Particularly if they're making donations to political parties.
Particularly so, yes. Yeah, and that's
a fact of what's going on.
So what other initiatives have you been pushing or kind of moving through council? What other sort of work are you trying to progress during your time in council?
Yeah, so it's interesting that I got on for financial reasons, but I'm probably more well known for my work on trees and building green canopies. So I've had a lot of runs in that regard, and so that's a great achievement. The City of Bayswater's tree management is superior to most other local governments. All of them seem to be making a big effort in this area, which is great now. But I'm very proud that there's thousands more trees in the City of Bayswater because of the work I've done on council, and I thank council and the administration for also backing that vision. The other thing is red tape. So, I've got a bit of libertarian in me, and I don't like government involvement in people's everyday lives, and so I'm always trying to urge the administration to rethink their processes so we don't have any stupid bureaucracy in there. Now, we're not at the point I'd like us to be, but we've come a long way. And look, it's things like the verges, so people can just literally now go and plant what they like on the verge. They don't have to come to the city for approval. If you want to plant a lemon tree out there, do that. If you want to have a herb garden, do that. If you want to make it water-wise, do that. You've got that power, that freedom. Whereas before, there were very tight controls. You had to get approvals and things like that. So we've led the way there. Businesses can set up al fresco. So instead of they'd have to normally write a letter for the application, then we'd come back and say, yes, you can do that. Instead, it's guidelines. It's saying, look, you can have the tables and chairs there, but there must be 2 metres, for example, of safe, clear pedestrian access way. So it's just giving people the rules, and as long as you follow those rules, don't waste your time by coming to the local government, and the local government won't waste their time by having to assess applications. So I think it's a win-win all the way around. And I'd love to see that happen more in all forms of local government, in all tiers of government. So local, state, federal, and all the departments, they just need to reduce stupid rules. They've got to question things. They've got to say, why are we asking for this?
Where do you see that applicable at state and federal level?
So I'm a financial planner, and I deal with the Tax Practitioners Board, ASIC, the ATO, all of these departments. The amount of paperwork which I have to do when dealing with them, and I'm thinking, well, there's no point in me doing this, but I've just got to jump through these hoops. Things like that should be sorted out. The state government, it's all over. The ability to do things in a more common sense and easy method is what needs to occur. Businesses and consumers and residents are spending far too much time on administrative things than they should otherwise have to.
Okay. And is there any doing the work in this regard, kind of like compiling all of these areas, or is it something that would require a strategic overhaul, or is it something that can be done on a bit by bit basis over the next few years? And is there anyone out there leading this work?
No, there's not. So apparently the federal government have come out with a red tape reduction. I have no faith in that at all, amounting to anything worthwhile. At a local government aspect, whilst we don't communicate with each other, so we don't share all the good work we're doing, at Bayswater we are. It's in our ethos now that we question why are we doing it? Is there a better way? Should we be doing it a different way? And so we are making changes. We've still got more to go, but we're making good changes in our red tape and our bureaucracy.
Great. Now before we wrap up, can you just tell me, over the next few months as we lead into the Western Australian local government elections. What are the sort of things that you think people in the community should be paying attention to, or asking their councillors about, or potential councillors about, generally any sort of issues that would be applicable to all local government areas that you think people should keep in mind?
Yeah. So that's a great question. I'm up for election as well in this October. It's voluntary. So voting in local government is voluntary, so you don't have to vote. So you only get about 30%, 20 to 30% generally of the residents voting. I used to think that was apathy, but then by speaking to people, because I say, oh, do you vote in local government, even if it's not my local government, I get this response, no, because I don't know who to vote for. And I said, what do you mean? You don't receive information? And they say, well, you can't trust it. And I agree, you cannot trust the information people use on their electorate pamphlets and stuff, because there's no law saying you've got to tell the truth. And so that's a real negative, and it's a great shame.
As in there's no punishment for telling lies. Is that what it is? Are there implications to lying?
I don't think so.
No.
I think I could say, oh, I'm a doctor on my flyers. I mean, if I got elected and you found out I wasn't, you might be angry, but I'm there for 4 years.
So I could put on my flyers that I'm going to give out puppies to everybody, and kittens and goldfish to every house.
Yeah.
Complete lies, no intention of doing it.
Yeah.
And then if I get elected based on that, there's no...
Oh, that's happened. So we had some people run saying we'll pay for underground power. We will underground power the City of Bayswater at no cost to the households. And, a few of them got elected. That was going back a few years ago. So yeah, you could do that if you think the puppies and the cats are winning for residents.
I have a theory that the first political party or the first group who can truly capture the public's affinity and affection for kittens and puppies and translate that into some mechanism for explaining policy, that they'll be onto a winner.
Okay.
And if that happens at local government level, maybe it might just start with me promising to give every household a puppy or a kitten of their choice.
Be good.
And see who follows up with it. Chris, thanks so much for your time, and we'll look to do this again.
Thanks, Nick.